23 minutes to 2. You may remember Zoe Butler arrested, a pregnant woman arrested in her pyjamas during COVID for promoting a Freedom Day protest against severe lockdowns. We've seen the protests by pro-Palestinian supporters over the week. Nobody there has been arrested. The police seem to be sitting on their hands saying there's nothing we can do. I'm joined now by Dr. Dvir Abramovich, Chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, a civil rights organisation fighting anti-Semitism and hatred. Doctor, is it a case of the spirit of the law for our friends, the letter of the law for our enemies?
Good afternoon, Tony. Good to be with you. Before I address this question, can I just say that anti-Semitism is not just my problem, Tony.
Sure.
It's your problem too.
Yep.
And hate
Agreed.
is all of our problem. And no one is safe if all of us aren't safe. And I think what we have seen over the last few weeks is terrifying. And it's certainly something that the law needs to step in. And I agree with you. We have seen extremist language. We have seen the degrading and the denigrating. We've seen people openly call for the destruction of the state of Israel. And what, of course, that does is that it can lead to physical violence against anybody who is perceived or actually supports Israel. And as I said in the Herald Sun today, we don't need to wait for some physical violence or for some deadly attack to take action. We need to push back against this evil because history has shown us that when we give a centimeter to hate, to vilification, to racism, bigotry takes hold. And it's like a weed that can take over the garden of tolerance that, our grandparents, your grandparents, our parents have worked so hard to nurture.
What do you make of the police's excuse or explanation that they couldn't, let's say, decide that any of the signs they saw at the pro-Palestinian protests were, in fact, incitements to violence?
Look, I've always had faith in the brave men and women of Victoria Police to protect us. I think the issue is the current laws as they exist. And when we witness rallies that, call for the destruction of Israel, supporting Hamas and terrorism, calling for violence against Israel, we know that this can actually lead to violence. And even for somebody like myself who is engaged in fighting anti-Semitism and racism 24/7, I have been truly shocked and sickened by the explosion of anti-Semitism. And we've had, Jewish scrolls, mezuzot, ripped from the post of homes where Jews live.
Yeah.
We've had school students being called bombers. We've had Nazi swastikas again being scrolled. And I think there is a place now for a review and a discussion by the government to ask whether supporting terrorism, supporting the destruction of a state, accusing Jews of being Nazis is something that needs to be looked at. And maybe the laws need to be changed to actually categorize this as hate speech. The freedom to express yourself is not the freedom to incite to violence.
Well, okay, I want to get your particular take on the phrase that's very common now at these protests, and it is, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I read that as basically, a plan to remove every Jew between the coast of Israel and the River Jordan. How do you see that? Is it an incitement to violence?
It's absolutely an incitement to violence. It's anti-Semitic. We know that it is the rallying cry, not just of Hamas. And I want to remind people that the evil that was perpetrated by Hamas marks the largest single-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And in fact, it's the single deadliest terror attack on civilians in history after 9/11.
Wow.
So when you have a rallying cry that is used by Hamas, another terrorist organization, which essentially says, we want to destroy every single Jew that lives in Israel, that is an incitement to violence. And this has to stop because we can't call ourselves a multicultural state. Jews will never feel safe, and neither would anybody else if the law doesn't step in and says that this kind of extremist language, this radical rhetoric is not outlawed. And look, I was the one who led the campaign to ban the Nazi swastika when nobody believed it could happen. I was the one who spearheaded the campaign to ban Nazi salute, and we got it in. We actually said that there are red lines that we will not allow people to cross.
Dr. Dvir Abramovich, Chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, you must accept however, that there can be public criticism of Israel's government and its choices and actions. Do you not?
Of course, and by the way, if you really want to see industrial strength criticism of Israeli policies and politicians, go to Israel. Israelis engage with this on a daily basis. I mean, Israel's democracy is robust. The newspapers, I think, are much tougher on the government than they are here. But there is a dividing line between saying that anybody who supports Israel is a Nazi, anybody who supports Israel should be killed. There is a difference. And this is the same thing. You know, we have now neo-Nazis who are marching through Flinders streets, going onto trains and asking people who are Jewish. And then we have, on the other side, those who support terrorism, who support Hamas. I mean, just a few weeks ago in Sydney, we had people chanting, "Gas the Jews." These are statements that belong in Nazi Germany, not in modern-day Australia.
We should point out, you're saying gas the Jews, not gas Israelis. Their argument was clearly not with Israel and the Israeli government. It was with Jewish people. Deputy Commissioner Neil Patterson said some of the signs, like the ones comparing Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, to Hitler, he said they might be offensive to some, but unfortunately they do not always constitute a criminal offence. Do you want to weigh in on that?
Look, I think that words matter, and words are bullets. And we know that ultimately the people who are paying the price are Jewish students, visibly Jewish people walking the streets who have to turn around if they hear steps behind them, or are now, in a sense, not wearing the yarmulke, wearing sports caps because they're afraid that they will be subjected to physical aggression. We had a man in Richmond. He had an Israeli flag outside his car, and 3 boys grabbed it and urinated on it.
Well,
we are seeing an expression of aggression and violence that I've never seen before. Open calls for the destruction of Israel, open calls for the genocide of the Jewish people. These cannot stand, Tony.
I'm keen to know this because I know you're somebody well acquainted with the law. Just to return to Zoe Butler, who gets arrested for incitement. She's in her pyjamas, she's pregnant, she has an appointment to go to that morning. The police come in and put handcuffs on her for incitement, and yet nobody at any of these rallies is arrested for incitement. It is lethal when there is even the appearance of an unequal application of the law. Do you want to speak about that and the damage that does, that double standard?
Well, I know that we need to be rock solid in pushing back against the evil of incitement, the evil of vilification. And look, Jews may be targeted, but abusing or arresting someone because of their religion or ethnic background, or in this case, their supposed support for Israel, is an attack on our way of life, our values, our democracy. And therefore, I say it again, I think the government needs to review the laws which define what is hate speech, what is incitement to violence, what is racial vilification. Because the last thing that we need is for someone to actually be seriously hurt, or even worse, to take this evolving threat seriously.
All right. The police act on the orders of the government. That's how it works. Do you think this state government is even-handed in its treatment of the two communities?
Look, I definitely think that this government is committed to the protection of the Jewish community. As I said, I led the campaign to ban the Nazi swastika and the Nazi salute, and the government came along. I think we need to push. I think we need to advocate. I think we need to put forward a compelling, convincing case that we are now at an inflection point. This war, which is taking place in the Middle East between Israel and the terrorist group Hamas, is having repercussions here. And it is Jewish people who are paying the price. And I have to say that I'm shocked to the core by the level of hatred, by the level of demonization that I've seen. This is so un-Australian. You know, this tears to shreds the values of tolerance and inclusivity and living together in harmony that we all cherish and value.
Well, and that needs to occur to make a multicultural society function. Thank you, Dr. Dvir Abramovich, Chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, a civil rights organisation fighting anti-Semitism and hatred. Thank you for your time this afternoon.